everybody. Thank you so much for supporting Indie Agency News. Before we get started, real quick, want to talk about our preferred partners now. These are not random sponsors. These are companies that have already proven that they help indies win. So I want to share a little something. Let me get this. Let me share this screen here. So we're going to the partner page right here. I'm going to share something that might change how you think about growth. You don't need to figure it out alone. I know. As an agency owner, probably used to solving everything yourself, but that's exactly the problem. 13 plus. Well, it was 13 when we started. I think there's more there, but 13 Indie Agency News members solved this problem with blood, sweat, and tears. I'm going to open this up right here so you can see this right here. They have an outside perspective on what was holding them back. And boy, they solve a lot of problems related to growth. We all know agency growth feels chaotic. It's hectic. You're working harder, but the results may be inconsistent. Your team might not be aligned. You're shooting in the dark instead of following proven systems. It's exhausting. We all know that. Blood, Sweat, and Tears simplifies all that with their vitals assessment. Now, this is a 40-point diagnostic, like a car, but for your agency. That shows you exactly where your bottlenecks are hiding. So no guessing. No assumptions, just data. Want proof it works? Take a look at it right there. That track record speaks for itself. 3.5 times revenue growth in 2 years, 10 to 30 times average ROI, 12 million plus client revenue one. And as I said, 13 and probably more in the agency news members. But listen, more importantly, it helps everything feel less chaotic. So if you're ready to stop winging it and start growing systematically, find out more about Blood, Sweat, and Tears at our Indie Agency News preferred partner page. You can go to indieagency.partners. That takes you right there. And then you'll see right here. You'll see all the things that you need to know about Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And you'll be able to take that audit. You can also schedule a call with the team there. On behalf of everybody at Indie Agency News, thank you so much for supporting this mission, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. It's been a minute since we've been live. A lot going on. End of the year. I think we're all sprinting to get to the end of the year. So anyway, first of all, thank you to all of our members. 300 plus strong. Really appreciate it. And here's what's up. The rates go up a little bit. Well, a little bit starting in January. So if you've been on the fence, get in touch with us. Aloha at indieagency.news. So, or you can just hit me up here. You can just zanger at indieagency.news. I might have the In-N-Out Burger secret menu discount for you for the first year of membership. And for those of you who are members, check your email because we have a survey that we've sent to you so that we can serve you even better in 2026 and beyond. So again, I want to thank everybody so much for supporting this mission. And a reminder that we will have the winners of Pet of the Year on Friday. And then we have our merch collection from Grown. So please, Indie AF, our tracker here. And here's the thing. I'm not going to lie. I was fiddling with the site before we went on the air and I broke something. So I'm going to be talking to the dev, but that's okay. We'll get it all fixed for you. We'll get these buttons going the way they should be. And all of that. So much more to come on that. So let's get to the task at hand, shall we? All right. For years, let's face it, we've been reading about the CMO, I guess, going away, shrinking budgets, the tenure thing, diminishing influence, and every analyst, I guess, seemed to agree that the CMO role was, I don't know if necessarily going extinct is the right word, but some people are and were. So the species, think about the species. What if it isn't going by the way of the dodo? What if it's just turning into something else that we haven't recognized yet. And so worldwide partners, thank you to John Harris and the team there. Shout out to Angie for hooking us up here. They just released Confessions of a CMO. Let me get, where is it? Let's get this over here. We're gonna show you that. That just turned into a Norm Macdonald impression. There it is. This is great, by the way. So this is Confessions of a CMO, and this is a first of its kind study, and it's based on anonymous interviews with CMOs worldwide. And so what was found, we're going to talk to a couple of brilliant folks here in a second. What they found really challenges everything that we thought we knew about marketing leadership. So CMOs are not disappearing. They're simply evolving into more distinct species, with each have their own survival strategies, navigating turbulence, change, and complexity. And so I am very pleased to bring Ree and Dominic in from Monigle today. We're going to talk. We're gonna chop it up a little bit about this, because so much to unpack here. So much to unpack here. So first of all, thank you for joining us. And then I want to start with this. So these are completely anonymous interviews and CMOs across 12 industries. Let me get this right. 12 industries spanning every region, so not just the United States. And so you created conditions for them to confess things that they would never say on a podcast or a show like this or a conference stage. So I want to get your initial, just, we thought this was going to happen, but we're a little bit surprised, and we'll dig in a little bit more to that. But what would you say some of the most shocking confessions that made you rethink what the CMO has actually become? So who wants to take that hot potato first? Ree or Dominic? Who wants that? Do you want me to flip a coin?
I'll jump in.
All right, do it.
So for me, the quote that comes to mind is that the CMO is the only C-suite role where the job is actually fielding absurdity. For me, the surprise there was in public discussions, you hear a lot of complaining about the subjectivity in the role and how frustrating it is to navigate it when you have, colleagues giving irrational pushback because they just don't like an ad. And what we heard behind closed doors was that the leaders who are succeeding under these circumstances have set aside those frustrations. They don't even see it as a negative feature of their role anymore. They've embraced it as the job. They realize that their sweet spot and their secret sauce is sitting on that border of emotion and reason and managing what happens there.
That's such a good point when we talk about emotion and reason, because one of the traps, and Dominic, let's talk about this for a second, and I'm veering a little bit from the questions here, but one of the biggest traps is genuflecting at the altar of performance. And where I go with this a lot of times, and pardon my French here for a second, I was in France next week. It's kind of bullshit that they have to choose one or the other, because to your point, Ree, a CMO has such a unique skill set that is highly specific yet broad at the same time. We talk about T-shaped people. That's, the classic thing that we talk about. And I would argue that the CMO is the classic T-shaped person that has a deep specialization, but can talk in a lot of different languages. So, Dominic, it is very interesting to see that there's an articulation that the quantitative and the qualitative for a C-suite that understands it well is probably going to benefit incredibly well.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, the role in which marketing sits just happens to be a place where it's always burdened with constant change. And if you're in an environment where everything is changing, it does breed a particular way of working or insight for those who end up staying in it. The other variable you see with CMOs is they're there and they're usually very passionate about the role and the job. When you combine passion's like code word for not letting go. And so if you think about not letting go in a world that's always changing, you
Right.
absolutely start to breed these new traits where they're actually leadership skills that are maybe more futuristic than the ones you're using, as opposed to marketing skills.
And here's one thing that I've noticed, and I think that part of the lens of this is you see this in agencies, and I think you see this in brands. So, judging by the color of my hair, I've been around a while. But when I talk to CMOs, and it's the same with agencies. So an agency exists to solve the business problems of a brand. That is evergreen. And I don't mean Evergreen, Colorado, where Rhea is. She's not in Evergreen, but there you go. You got to tie it back in. But that's such a fundamental piece of it. I would say I can't honestly think of enough. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've had a CMO who hasn't really wanted it. And what I mean by that is, to your point, they're emotionally invested in this. They care about this so deeply. And I think there becomes this misunderstanding from the rest of the C-suite that, yeah, you know what? We might think this person's a little bit of a loopy loon dog, but when you trust your CMO in the same way that when you trust your agency, it's not always going to be perfect, but if you trust, the possibilities of success can be very, very high. And I find what's really interesting here is that in this study it's categorizing CMOs into these distinct species. And I want to go ahead and pull this up because I thought this was fascinating. In marketing, we talk about archetypes and we talk about all of those things, right? But I think that this is really interesting because there's a little bit more nuance. So you've got like your Chief Mutiny Officer. So that's using strategic insubordination. Your Chief Missing Officers who survive through invisibility, Chief Mood Officers, emotional climate. So let's talk a little bit about how the taxonomy emerged and what confession patterns revealed. What confession patterns revealed these, and they weren't just personalities, but really something more deep. So let's talk about these species, as it were.
So much of the discussion in this space has been about the pressures that marketing leadership faces and how we're seeing this collapse of centralized power. So what we realized is that when the CMOs we were speaking with, the stories they were sharing revealed that they were thriving not in spite of those pressures, right? It wasn't really this kind of like, we're hanging on by a thread story. It was that they were thriving because they had learned to use those frictions to create forward momentum. So really, when you have a harsh environment, and this is where the biological metaphor starts to help, what happens when food sources get scarcer? It's the big apex species that they struggle to survive. And the smaller and the nimbler you are, the more you can thrive under those conditions. So what we started to see was that this was no longer one role. It had turned into these different sets of adaptive traits that we were seeing individual CMOs using. Think of these not as personality types, like you said, Doug, but as skill sets and tool sets. They might walk into one meeting and be the Chief Missing Officer. Nobody even noticed there. But then they walk into the next meeting and they're the Chief Mutiny Officer. They're weaponizing difference. They're bringing cultural contagion into the boardroom.
So it sounds like they would err more towards, and err is not the right word, but they would lean more towards a primary species, but then pull some of these other traits in as well, and based upon the need for adaptability.
That's definitely what we observed, but one would argue the trick to all of this is probably to learn a little bit from every species. Even if I reflect back to what we were pointing out into my own world, I'm probably a little bit of a mutiny officer mixed with a mood officer, mixed with a meaning officer, because I believe in the power of disruption. I like to set the stage with a particular vibe, and I am very passionate about the underlying measures and predictability of the human condition that leads to this job. And it's important that, we codify things into these particular taxonomies as ease of learning, ease of understanding. But the magic and the power is in how you adapt, observe, and adopt each of these traits in your own way of how you collaborate.
No, that's really interesting. Were there some other species that you have this number of them, but was there a point where you said, oh, maybe we add one here, subtract one here? Were there other considerations and other types of species that you were thinking of, but it was like, this might turn into a big old everything bagel?
There are so many nuances between the species, but one thing that I think most of them have in common is they're using forms of camouflage. And where you start to slice and dice them is, what is their preferred method of camouflage? And I say camouflage because in a lot of the organizations where they're thriving, there's some suspicion about marketing, and they need to overcome that. So are they using humor and redirection? Maybe they're the mood officer. Are they calling brand anything but brand? Are they calling it culture or purpose?
Right.
Maybe that's the chief missing officer, right? But it can be a similar way of wielding influence without authority, but we created a field guide so that you could sort of recognize them by their tracks. So are you seeing pilots and prototype? Maybe you have a momentum officer. Are you seeing tempo and pacing? Maybe that's a moments officer.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of the specific quotes here. So one chief missing officer confessed, I was successful if everyone believed the idea was theirs and nobody recalls exactly what role I played. Another mutiny officer said, my job isn't to steady the ship, it's to stir up what's gone stagnant. Yeah. What did these confessions reveal about the pressures forcing CMOs and marketers to even operate this way? Dominic?
I think what you're really seeing is that any problem is all about how you frame it. And what you're seeing with the way in which, like, even those quotes you just gave us, the thematic that brings it all together is that it starts with ownership and accountability. Each one of those phrases is the CMO going, you know what? I'm going to take this for what it is and who I am. I'm just going to own it and run with it and start to adapt and pivot and change. And it's just a reminder that the world we're in, the only assumption you actually can make is that everything will change. There's no more one size fits all. Choice is everything. The ability to get attention is increasingly fragmented. All of these are almost a singular force of pressure, which is change. If you cannot adapt, you're not going to be able to thrive. And every story each of our CMOs gave, they were owning their premise. That's why creating the taxonomy was actually quite easy, because there was so much ownership and passion that every single CMO had that was a reflection of not just who they are, but actually an indication it was a culture they were creating around them. The CMOs weren't lone wolves. They were part of a team. Their team adopted their own traits. Then these traits become part of the organization themselves.
Right.
That tells you this is cultural and not a role.
Right. Before we get to the next question, every Australian or Kiwi that I bring onto the show, first of all, the opening is Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi.
Correct. Who invented the pavlova? Australia or New Zealand?
That wasn't the question I thought you were going to ask me, which I don't actually
know.
Now, bear in mind where that phrase came from.
Well, bear in mind the godparents are Kiwis, so I have a dog in this hunt. Are you going to pass?
I don't know the answer.
You're going to pass. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, but we can agree the Anzac cookie is delicious.
We can. And what I'm going to say is you're probably saying that it's all come from the New Zealanders.
They need something.
All of that just proves the point that we all mirror off of each other to learn and adapt. And the next minute you know, everyone's a CMO.
Listen, the Australia, New Zealand, it's brilliant down there. I think we all know this. So I want to get specifically, because we are talking about, we are concerned about independent agencies here at Indie Agency News. It's real interesting now as an agency figuring out and navigating how you work with your client, how you work with a marketer. Based upon this report, and we will provide a link so everyone can get churched up a little bit on it. I'm curious, how should, and specifically independent agencies, how should they be using this research? How should they be using the lessons learned here to navigate, really to navigate their client and to navigate a CMO?
This is where we're really going to double down to, you mentioned John
Yeah,
Harris at the top of your call. The spirit of WPI is all about collaboration. And
right.
what you see in this study, and in terms of how agencies should use it from our perspective, is in collaboration, but almost advanced collaboration into the co-creation territory, where everything is mixed modality. You can pivot and adjust and change. This gives you a snapshot on the things that you can actually pull out of your quiver to say, oh, I can just pivot slightly like this and I can get things moving forward.
Mm,
Sometimes, like one of the quotes was, I don't ask for permission, just get to a test. You want to be able to take these, reflect back, and just adjust how you might collaborate, who is in front of you, and make those changes so that the overall creative product you do when you put those brains together can actually amplify what success even looks like to start
yeah,
with.
yeah, and I think, and Ria, I'll ask you here in a second, but one thing that really strikes me is that this is such a, you know, and Ria, you're in Colorado, I'm in Oregon, so it's like a map on a really, really complicated hike. But what I find interesting is it does provide a little bit of a guide, and I would imagine, I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but I would imagine that being able to use this, an agency would be able to think about better questions to ask their client, understanding which species they are.
Absolutely. And I think in addition to that, understanding how to equip our clients with the socialization materials they need that match their style of influence. One of the things that this research reveals is that all this discussion about the role and how the role itself is changing has obscured how CMOs are serving their entire organizations. Very often, what they're actually doing is they're absorbing the most difficult external or cultural currents. They're helping the organization learn to onboard change, learn to metabolize it. They're at that forefront, almost acting as the immune system for the corporate ecosystem, protecting them and then helping them get up to speed before they become irrelevant. So if we can see our clients playing that role, we can better equip them to do it well.
And I think the reminder too to agencies are, again, you are here to solve a client's business problem. Yet a secondary piece of it, as I've learned these many in the industry, is when you are able to make your client look good, especially to the C-suite, there's a tremendous amount of value in that. And I don't mean it to be nefarious. What I mean is everybody wants to know that they're doing a great job with each other, and people should know that, especially the C-suite. And so as an agency, being able to know that you've done something, first of all, that's on brief and what you're supposed to be doing, but then secondly, helps your client look great, that's just such a nice little component to it. Did you get any feedback from any of the CMOs about how they interact with their agency partners?
We certainly did. In fact, actually, one of my favorite stories went beyond how they interact with the agency partners. One of the CMOs, when pushed to kind of reflect back on their career of why they were successful, said that they were successful because they started in agency. And the story was about, well, what did you learn? Was it a skill based? Was it ideology? And their response was, I learned how to be bossed around.
Oh,
And it's very telling because it means it was teaching them how to meta reflect, how they might adjust, and actually how you deal with conflict. And so when they graduated to a role and decided to make that shift into becoming the CMO, they realized actually that agencies are actually your direct partners. It's a different way of working and thinking. And when you lean in and adopt and adapt, you actually start to create that success.
yeah.
And so it tells you that we're actually a team together. And when you do that and collaborate in that way, you succeed.
Going back to trust your agency. All right, we're going to do some quick fire answers. These were positioned as one sentence answers, but every time I've done this, it turns, let's just say short answers. The confession that surprised you most because you didn't expect the CMO to admit it. Ray.
I think the big idea was that there are no carousel moments when you're a CMO, right? We think that the CMO is Don Draper, but what we learned is that the ta-da, the like, look at the creative idea I came up with in the new corporate savannah, that is the most dangerous moment.
Yeah.
And these CMOs are too savvy to expose themselves like that.
Right. Right. Dominic?
Mine is half my job is saying out loud what everyone pretended isn't true.
It's a good one. So let's take a moment to, again, let's one of my favorite people in this business, John Harris. I recently told every agent to do in the pitch that they came in second. Well, that's nice. And then we were going to share this, John. We'll share where the full report is. I love John Harris. I hate his choice in NFL teams. But let's move on. If oh God, there's so many to pick from here. If you could tell every CEO one thing based on these confessions, what would it be?
I don't think they need to understand how their CMO operates, right? We position
Thank
that
you.
like it's a bad thing.
Thank
but
you.
Let them work their dark magic. They have
Trust
a skill set
them.
that's not yours.
Trust your CMO. Jeez, go to the club, hang out, golf, just go. Let them do their thing.
And let them be a little different from the other
Let them
corporate
be
animals.
show a little bit. That's okay.
Yeah, you want your CMO to be a little bit off, as one of they said.
Oh my God. Well, you've spent time with me and you realize I might be actually a pretty good CMO because I am a weirdo. One quote from the study that perfectly captures what CMOs won't say publicly, or a paraphrase.
Oh, I'd say prediction is power.
What do you mean by that?
The CMO's innate ability to actually decipher what could happen and the comfortability of dealing with that vagueness is actually what gives them the inherent ability to succeed. And I think people thrive, a lot of the really good CMOs thrive on the ability to predict, and they get a self-centered satisfaction to it. And I think we forget with all of the metrics we have to report and how the job and role is forced us, it kind of blinds the passion a little bit, loses out some of the good parts of ego that people like to lean into. And it's a great job. It's not something that you should shy away from. Be passionate about it, enjoy it, lean in.
Yeah, exactly. Ree, you get the final word here.
The CMO's job is to force the organization to change before it becomes obsolete. This, for me, epitomizes this study, right? They're the front lines of change. They've got more data, less credibility, less influence than any of the other members of the C-suite, meaning they know how to adapt. And that's what they have the opportunity to teach everyone else in the company.
I love that. I love that. All right. We're going to put everybody, well, why is my name up there? You clowns know who I am. Ree, Dominic from Monigle. Listen, we could probably go another 10 hours on this, but decorum prevents us from doing that because we'd probably put people to sleep. But this is what I love about this is very, very dynamic, very real, very actionable. And that's a little corporate speaky word that I gave you. But I like the cut of this jib because it's a little bit different, yet it's familiar. And it reminds everybody that the most important thing is for you to trust in the C-suite, trust your CMO, and for the CMO, trust your agencies. So confessionsofacmo.com. Ree, Dominic, I'm going to put you backstage for a second. Don't go away. It's not a Zoom call. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All righty, here we go. A reminder, Pet of the Year results. We're not going to do a live stream. We're just going to do the results. It's the holidays. People were like, yeah, cool, but I really don't want to do that. And if you are considering membership, rates do go up January 1st. Please get in touch with me directly. I am more than happy to talk to you about everything that Indie Agency News has done, is doing, and intends to do in the future. And to our 300 plus agency members around the world, thank you so much for supporting this mission. On behalf of everybody at Indie Agency News, I'm Doug Zanger. See you next time.